حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا، يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome to ITV and let's talk with me, Julie Alli, on our Wednesday edition of the program. We do hope you're going to keep us company right up until 10 o'clock this morning. Lots of interesting things coming your way. We're going to start off by talking about World Hearing Day. We'll also be joined by someone from Cape Town to talk about CDH, and we'll wrap up to talk about the budget, women and the budget, and how women can manage money more efficiently on the home front. So all of that coming up. Our lines will be open throughout the show. Do call in, and who knows, you might just stand in line to win a wonderful sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets. So do keep us company, and we do hope we're going to hear from you. But first up, let's talk about World Hearing Day. I kind of thought that World Deaf Awareness Day and World Hearing Day is one and the same thing. But our first guest, Tanya, who is with the South African, S01 is how she refers to it. Her name is Tanya Hanekom. She is the national president, and she's going to talk to us about World Hearing Day and how different it is to Deaf Awareness Day. Tanya, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Right. We spoke about, firstly, S01. What does that stand for?
Stands for the South African Association of Audiologists. An audiologist is a hearing healthcare provider. So the association is a group of audiologists spread across South Africa who are really dedicating their lives to hearing and hearing awareness.
Now, I spoke to someone last week and we were talking about deaf awareness, but you indicated that deaf awareness and hearing awareness is two different things. How come? It sounds like one and the same.
Quite right. And it's to the public seems very similar. Deaf Awareness Month has been celebrated for many, many years in September. So September is Deaf Awareness Month, and it's a fantastic initiative where the culture of deaf individuals using South African Sign Language as a means of communication is celebrated. And that's a very, very important part of the deaf culture. The South African Association of Audiologists is choosing to celebrate World Hearing Day because our focus is somewhat different. The focus is on identifying and managing hearing loss. And there is a difference between being deaf and having hearing loss. So deaf is, in deaf culture, deaf is spelt with a capital D, and that means you've got a severe or profound hearing loss, and you choose to embrace that as a culture. And there are deaf schools and deaf churches, deaf communities. It's a very strong culture. But the South African Association of Audiologists has opted to celebrate World Hearing Day as the 3rd of March each year. Now, World Hearing Day is an initiative sparked by the World Health Organization, and it's an international celebration of hearing and hearing awareness, as well as the awareness and identification of hearing loss. So when I say there's a difference between being deaf and having hearing loss, it's a fine distinction between the two. You can have a mild hearing loss at certain tones or frequencies and not be considered deaf at all. And I think that's part of the focus of why there's a change in terminology.
Okay, now when we talk about hearing loss, why does it happen? Why is it that some people, or maybe it is age related, as you grow older, everything starts breaking down, and one of the things obviously that would be affected is your eyes and perhaps your ears as well. But what about hearing loss in little children? We'll get back to older people just now. But what about hearing loss in little children? Does that say that the child was born with a possible hearing loss and the parents hadn't picked it up?
That's it. So childhood hearing loss is the theme of World Hearing Day for 2016. And so the focus is on children this year. Hearing loss in children often is congenital, and that means that a child is born with hearing loss. That's one aspect.
But the child is not deaf. He or she has a certain percentage of hearing
loss. That's
okay.
It, yes, yeah. Now, hearing loss can be from childhood illnesses as well, so measles or mumps. Your major childhood illnesses can certainly put you at risk for hearing loss, as well as the use of ototoxic medication, and that's medication such as chemotherapy, for an example, is ototoxic. So oto is the ear, toxic is poison. So, of course, you know, if you are having chemotherapy, as an example, it can result in some degree of hearing loss. And
I should imagine injuries as well. If you have a child that's involved perhaps in an accident,
yes,
or has had a fall in the playground or some such thing,
yeah,
that too could impact in hearing loss.
Quite right. And that, as well as the health of a mother during pregnancy. And that is one of the reasons why childhood hearing loss is preventable in many cases, because it's often related to some sort of illness. And so, of course, your first step is always prevention, to have optimal care of the mother during pregnancy, optimal delivery. If the child lands up in ICU, of course, that child is then more at risk for hearing loss. If there's any family history of hearing loss, that child is also at risk. And the other aspect is the incidence of middle ear infections, which, as you know, is very, very common in children. I'm sure we all know a little one who's had some sort of an ear infection in their childhood. And an ear infection, of course, if it's not treated appropriately, can result in more permanent hearing damage. But more importantly, if that middle ear system is filled with fluid during an ear infection, even if that infection clears up, the child is no longer ill, no longer has a fever, but that fluid can remain in the middle ear system. And so that can actually result in a temporary hearing loss for the child that could go on for several months. And
is that when they actually insert grommets in the child's ears?
Yes.
And is that a permanent thing? Does he live with it for the rest of his life?
No, grommets fall out normally after about 6 to 12 months. And if the fluid in the middle ear system remains there indefinitely, of course, if a child is trying to learn speech and language, and picking up new words every day, if there's fluid in the middle ear system, that hearing is then muffled, and the child's not going to develop optimal speech and language purely because of a good old middle ear infection.
When a child's being treated for grommets, and I know you're the audiologist
Right.
and not an ENT specialist, but I'm just wondering, when he has the first incidence of grommets in the ears, would he be necessarily cured for life, so to speak, or is this some sort of an infection that could possibly flare up later on in life, and then he or she needs to go for a second set of grommets?
Right. So the reason that children are more prone to middle ear infections compared to adults is because their little systems are smaller. So the eustachian tube, which links the nose, the back of the nose to the middle ear system, that eustachian tube is shorter and more horizontal in children. And as we age and mature, that kind of pulls down and it lengthens and it strengthens. And that's why adults aren't getting middle ear infections as frequently as children are. So to answer your question, sometimes one set of grommets is enough just to get the child through those developmental years. But there are other children who end up having 10, 11, 12 sets of grommets in their lifetime, but that's not typical.
Is that indicative of that particular child growing up with possible hearing problems for the rest of his life?
Not necessarily, unless there's some long-term damage done to the middle ear from scar tissue. But as a rule of thumb, it's a temporary hearing loss.
Okay, now when we talk about hearing awareness or World Hearing Day, we focusing on little children. Is it common for little children to be obviously diagnosed with severe hearing loss, and then those little kids would possibly be fitted out for hearing aids, and how well would they cope with something like that?
Right. So the incidence of disabling hearing loss worldwide in children is 32 million. Now, to answer your question, the identification of hearing loss is the first step. Now, it's very difficult for a parent to know whether or not their child has a hearing loss. What's critical is that every child, ideally, should have a hearing screening test done at birth. There is a move to have a universal newborn hearing screening done. Of course, we're a way away from that, but that's the goal, that every child should have a hearing screening test done within a few days of birth. And the way that that's done is we put a little probe in the child's ear. It's not painful at all, and it sends sounds into the cochlea, which is the inner ear, and we measure echoes back from the cochlea. And it takes less than a minute to do, and it's sensitive enough to identify if there's normal cochlea or inner ear structure or not. If there's not, then we go on and do further testing. So that's critical. And if your child didn't have a hearing test at birth, it's a good idea to take your child to a local audiologist and have your child's hearing tested. Further to that, we recommend that your child is again tested at 1, 3, and 5 years of age. And at each age, the tests are somewhat different, and we're able to glean more and more information as we go.
Okay, we are talking to Tanya Hanekom. She's the National President at S01. We're talking World Hearing Day. We'll be back with you right after the ad break. If you have any questions or comments, do call in. Welcome back. This is Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. I do hope you're going to stay with us till 10 o'clock. Right now we're talking to Tanya Hanekom. She is the president of the South African Association for Audiologists. We're talking about World Hearing Day, which happened on 3rd of March, but still an important enough issue for us to be spending some time and focusing on it, and hopefully give you some valuable information as far as your little ones are concerned. Tanya, back to you. And we talked about grommets, we talked about children being born with a hearing disability or hearing difficulty, hearing loss, whatever we refer to it as. But how would mom or dad pick up that the little one's having a hearing problem? What are the signs and symptoms to look out for?
Right. So it's a good question, and that's part of the problem, because hearing loss in little ones, if a child isn't hearing well, of course one of the first symptoms is going to be that they don't learn to speak. So by the time the child is 1, 1.5, and isn't quite learning new words, isn't quite speaking as much as the siblings or the cousins, that starts to raise a worry or two, and the mom might question, perhaps take them to the local doctor.
Moms are often told that don't fret, he or she is a late starter.
Correct.
How do you respond to that?
And the common thing is to say, Albert Einstein only spoke when he was 4. And it's not okay.
Right.
And the truth is that then if mom's told, shame, I'm sure he's fine, don't worry. She might leave it for another 6 months, and that becomes a problem, because then what we often find is children are then only identified with hearing loss at perhaps 2.5, 3, or 4 years of age, which is very late. By that stage, they've already missed that critical language learning period of 0 to 3 years. And so that's why I say to look for signs or symptoms of hearing loss in your child isn't really enough. And children, especially babies, if you try and rattle something or bang and look for them to watch what you're doing, it's not sensitive enough to pick up a mild or moderate hearing loss. You can see a child with even a severe hearing loss might respond to environmental sounds, but that's not enough to develop normal speech and language. And so to answer your question, yes, if you're concerned, by all means take your child for a hearing test. But even if you're not concerned, it's a good idea to have your child's hearing tested regularly. So by that, we recommend at birth, age 1, 3, and 5 at least, or in between if you're worried at all. And what's nice is to find your local audiologist. So there are audiologists all over South Africa, mostly in health centers and hospitals, as well as in public health. And there is a link to our website, which will be shown later, I'm sure, which one can go onto the website, type in your area, and find a list of audiologists who are local to you. And make a relationship with your audiologist, make friends. And especially if you've got a little one, you can phone them up and say, oh, I'm not sure if his ears are blocked or not. Can I come and check? They can do something called a tympanogram, which makes sure that the middle ear system is working as it should. And so to have that relationship even before you need it or before you're worried is valuable. And as I say, every child should have a hearing test, at least at birth.
Little ones often, when they come down with colds and flus, etc., it seems that the ears flare up as well.
Yes,
they have lots of problems with ears. And we know that it's all linked, the ear, nose and throat.
That's it.
So if you have a cold, it's going to impact on the ears, etc. If your child presents with way too many colds and flus in the early years of, growing up, is that a red flag for you?
It's not, as long as those middle ear systems are clearing after each cold. So I know with my little one, when he has a cold, my first thought is, I wonder if it's gone to his ears. And by that I mean that eustachian tube linking the nose to the middle ear system might become blocked, and that middle ear system fills with fluid. So luckily for me, I can pop him along to my clinic and do a quick test, and make sure that once that cold is resolved, that those middle ear systems are in fact back to normal.
Moms often treat, you can't take every cough and cold to the doctor, so they normally treat the little ones and themselves at home as well, over-the-counter meds and your olive oils and all of those Dutch remedies, etc. What is your take on that?
Well, I'm getting a little bit out of my realm here as an audiologist because, we're not prescribing medication.
Yes.
But I can tell you that ENTs, as a first port of call, that's ear, nose and throat specialists, they often use nasal sprays and certain cortisone-based nasal sprays to clear the nose to get to the ear. So their first port of call isn't, in fact, antibiotics, unless it's a active infection, but they're really trying to deal with the structural changes in the nose.
You were talking about an app which is very useful for people at home who don't necessarily want to go out to see an audiologist, and maybe that would be the stepping stone to perhaps then, if serious enough, go to the audiologist. Can you share that with us?
Sure. So the app is called Hear ZA. That's HEAR ZA. Now, this app is not for use with children.
Okay.
It's only for use, I think it's from age 16 and above or 18 and above. So it's specifically for adults. And it's fun and it's free to download from your iStore or from your Android store on your phones. So if you've got a smartphone, you can log on to the store, download it free of charge. And you can take it's a hearing screening test that you can do. You must use some sort of a headphone or earphones. And there's a lot of information on the app. So just have a look around it when you're there. There's a lot of information about hearing loss. And what's neat is that you take the test and it actually works on a signal to noise ratio. So the speaker gives you a series of numbers, and there's increased levels of background noise while you take the test. And at the end of the test, it gives you a score, and it's an indication of whether your hearing is within normal limits or not. Now, it doesn't, it's not sensitive to pick up hearing loss only in one ear. So again, if you've got any concerns at all, rather just go directly to your audiologist. But you can take the test for fun. And there is on the app a list of hearing healthcare professionals, so audiologists per area. So the app uses your location and it says, right, there's 3 audiologists in your area, one 1.6 kilometers down the road, one 3 kilometers down the road, and you can look at that list and choose the person that you want to go to, either contact them directly or you put your details in and they contact you. This app was developed through by the Here ZA team, which is related to the University of Pretoria and David Swanepoel, and it's a fantastic initiative, really great awareness, and Michael Mole and a whole host of other celebrities have been involved in marketing the app.
How accurate is it?
I believe it's pretty accurate. There's a lot of research that's gone into it from the University of Pretoria. So I believe it's sensitive enough to pick up hearing loss. But as I say, if there's any worries, if you are concerned, you know, your instinct is a powerful thing. So rather go and have a test directly.
Unfortunately, time to wrap up. I can't believe that 25 minutes have gone by already. Lovely chatting to you. Your final words to people watching us this morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been such a pleasure. And my final push is to say, really, find your local audiologist, find their contact details, make an appointment, and even if you just go and have a cup of tea, it's a good start to forming that relationship.
Thank you so much for being with us. Lovely to have you in the studio. That was Tanya Kutsia from the South African Audiology Association talking to us about World Hearing Day. Let's take an ad break, and when we get back we'll be joined by someone in Cape Town. We'll be linking up to the Cape Town studio to talk about CDH. Welcome back. We're going to cross over to our Cape Town studios to talk about CDH. Now, it is said that CDH occurs in one birth in every 2,500 births. The cause of CDH is not yet known, and also it occurs as frequently as spina bifida and cystic fibrosis, but yet there's very little research being done and virtually no media coverage on CDH. So inshallah, by way of this program today, we will try and understand what is CDH, how it impacts on children and families, and how we as a community can support these families. Assalamu alaikum to the couple in the Cape Town studios, and the name I have here is Rizka Sears. Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, we can.
All right, would you like to identify yourselves? I presume you are the parents of a child suffering from CDH. Do identify yourself and tell us what is CDH.
Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Abdul Moti Sears, and I'm the father of Muhammad Yaqeen Sears, who was born with CDH.
Salam.
What is
I'm
CDH?
Jessica.
What does it stand for?
It stands for congenital diaphragmatic hernia.
How old is your little one? I presume your little one was born with the condition, and how and when did you know that there's something wrong with your little one?
He's almost 3 years old. We found out when I was 6 months pregnant, and we went for our scan to find out if it was a girl or boy, and they picked it up and then referred us to Groote Hospital.
It must have been devastating knowing that your child has this condition. Did you understand at that point just how serious it was and how debilitating it would be for the child and yourselves as parents?
Yes, it was a bit challenging at the time because more the fact that we didn't know what it was. When we got to Groote and they did all the tests and informed us that it's CDH, what happened thereafter is that obviously all the information about CDH was then brought to our attention. It was obviously, we were taken aback in terms of the challenges that Muhammad Yaqeen and ourselves would possibly have faced, and explained to us at the time what his condition was.
What exactly, is his condition when he was born? Can you explain what was the disability of, CDH? How did it impact on him as a baby? And now he's 3 years old. What are the challenges you're facing as a parent with a child with CDH?
What the diaphragmatic hernia actually is where the diaphragm doesn't close. So all his organs, which are supposed to be under the diaphragm, moved up into his chest onto his left lung. So what it does, it actually crushes or causes the lung not to develop properly. So they actually wanted me to have an abortion at 6 months because his chances of survival was very slim. And obviously we said no, we wouldn't do it. And he was 2 days old when he had his operation, and he had to go to certain hospitals for tests and stuff to see how his development was, and alhamdulillah he is completely 100% normal, except for the fact that his left lung is a bit still underdeveloped.
So going forward, what are the doctors, saying about his future growth? Because it is said that roughly 50% of babies born with CDH don't survive, and the 50% that do survive will endure very long hospital stays throughout their lives.
So I've actually got a support group that we've started about a year ago. We're about 21 ladies in South Africa at the moment whose children was born with CDH. On the group we have 4 ladies whose babies actually died. And it was very emotional for everybody on the group because we know exactly how scary and how it felt for these moms to lose your baby, or whatever, to even think that you can lose your baby. The one baby, her name is Shiloh, she's 3 years old at the moment. She stayed in hospital for 322 days. And lucky for us, alhamdulillah, Muhammad Yakin only stayed in hospital for 13 days.
It's really heartening to know, alhamdulillah, that, you have, it seems, a much healthier baby than the other children. And we do understand that every child is different. Every child that has CDH is different to another child. No 2 children are exactly the same. So in terms of the support group, when you hear of a child doing better than your child, or a child not doing as well as your child, how do you support the children? And in terms of medical support, what is in place to help these children? What other side effects do they suffer apart from the lungs and the heart, the impact on the heart?
I think that the challenges that, from what I see and what we speak about on the chat, is 2 of these children they have to be on oxygen constantly, and there's like a tube that has to go through their stomach, which they need to be fed through every day, all the time, because of complications that they can't swallow or things like that. And it's actually sad to see these things, because when I look at Muhammad Yakin and alhamdulillah how he turned out, I'm one of the lucky ones on the group, alhamdulillah.
Dad, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think what's very challenging for me is that I think is the unknown. When the mothers are pregnant and you don't know what to expect, because the percentages that they give you in terms of firstly when the child is born, at that point survival, and even the operation is a very high risk, because what actually happens with the op is that when the organs go into the chest, because the only 2 organs that's above the diaphragm is your heart and your lungs, so everything else can push up, and in Muhammad Yakin's case almost all his organs moved up through. To move them back and to position them, that is obviously the challenge, and with Allah's qudrat, the hands of the doctors, obviously, it determines how well they put it back into place. So obviously that is the big challenge I feel at the beginning for parents. And fortunately for him, the operation went very well. The 13 days that he was in hospital, he was on all sorts of pipes. And obviously initially he had to be supported to breathe. And the only way you can know how well the lung is developed is once they take you off that machine and he starts breathing on his own, and then obviously the monitoring happens. And hence why Rishia just mentioned that some of the moms are still where they still have to support the kids to help them breathe. And like you said earlier, it's obviously extremely challenging because every child is very different. So I think you can only make dua and obviously hope that the development goes better than most.
Alhamdulillah, you suggesting that he's 3 years old, he's doing far better than his peers who is suffering a similar condition as he is, and we continue to make dua that not only Muhammad Yaqeen but all the other little ones suffering from CDH, Allah gives them complete shifa, inshallah. We're going to take an ad break and we'll be back with you right after that. Welcome back. This is Let's Talk with me, Julie Alli. We are talking about CDH, a condition which occurs approximately in every 2,500 babies. The cause of CDH is not yet known, and very little is known about the condition. So, inshallah, by way of this program, we do wish to create awareness, and we do hope and pray that we are able to support this family who are talking to us, husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Sears from the Cape Town studios. If you have any comments or questions or you'd like to contribute to the show, do call us. Our lines will be open after this segment of the program, inshallah. And don't forget, there's a giveaway in the show as well from Broadway Sweets, a sweet hamper from Broadway Sweets. Back to our guests in the Cape Town studios. Assalamu alaikum to you. Now, Rizka, you were 6 months pregnant when it was picked up that there's something wrong with the little one, with the baby. Before going for that 6-month checkup, did you pick up anything within yourself? Were there any signs or symptoms that you felt that there's something wrong? This pregnancy is not going the way it should be going.
There was absolutely no idea for me knowing that there was something wrong with Muhammad Yaqeen. I think we were just too overwhelmed and excited because it took me a very long time to fall pregnant. And I had no idea something was wrong. When they initially told us, the only thing I could do was cry because I waited so long for him.
Now, obviously, when you realized that you were going to give birth to a baby with this condition, CDH, I'm certain you as parents must have done lots and lots of research into this condition. How well were you prepared to receive this baby with the condition, and what more did you understand that you can share with other parents who have, find themselves in a similar predicament?
I don't actually think you're ever prepared when you are being wheeled into the theater to have your Caesar done, and you have no idea if your baby is going to be alive once he's born or what his condition is going to be. It's very scary and overwhelming, and I think at the time, the group that we have now, the support group, is what I needed back then, just to maybe help me a bit to get through it, because the first thing the doctor told me as we were going into theater was that if he survives the first 5 minutes, then we'll be lucky. And that was the most terrifying words for me, because how do you give birth to a baby and not know if he's going to be around 5 minutes later?
He's 3 years old now. Alhamdulillah, you both have indicated that he's doing very, very well. What type of challenges lie ahead for you? I know it's difficult to predict that, but how able is he as, compared to his peers, his 3-year-olds? And Do you have special conditions or restrictions? Does he, run around and play around as any other 3-year-old would? Or do you have specific, protection around him, in terms of do's and don'ts?
We've noticed recently, because he's now starting to run more and play more, that he gets tired extremely quick. So he's on a S01 pump, which I need to give him if he needs it. So you can see that he can't run as long or play as long as other children. And the fact that he won't be able to play contact sport, I think it's a bit sad for my husband because he used to play rugby. I think those are his main challenges that he's going to have to face once he grows up. And I'm very, maybe if you want to say paranoid, to the fact that if he might choke, or because he can't be, if he chokes, you can't do the normal thing where if somebody chokes, you have to do it in a certain way. And if he starts coughing, I get scared because I'm worried about his lung and things like that.
Gosh, I can't even begin to identify with what you as parents must be going through. I make dua, inshallah, Allah give you people lots and lots of strength, and bless your son Muhammad Yaqeen and all the little ones in his condition with complete shifa, inshallah. Have you as parents tried to explain to him that he's different in that he has a certain condition, and because of that condition he can't be as robust as any other 3-year-old boy?
I think he's still too young to understand that. Look, I must say that we've been extremely fortunate, alhamdulillah, that he's 100% normal in terms of his development. He's extremely sharp, alhamdulillah. His memory is excellent. Look, there will probably come a time when we will have to explain the massive scar on his tummy. Right now he just sees it as normal. And then it will probably be maybe a bit easier to explain it to him, for him to understand. And look, fortunately, there is a lot of information out there to help do the explaining. But if I may, and just come back to your initial question, I think, to parents out there, my advice would be that when finding out if God forbid that your child is diagnosed with CDH, if you find that out, and once you, obviously it's automatic that you will learn about it and find out as much as you can. I think the best advice I could give is to embrace it. I mean, how you respond emotionally, that is not always in your control, because your emotions, it's your child, you can't always control that. But my advice would be embrace it, and in that way, I feel, and I think this is because that is the way I dealt with it, is that you ask Allah for guidance and help, but once they're born, and I think accept the challenges that might be, because at the end of the day, if you're gonna, for the lack of better words, beat yourself up about it, you won't be able to be probably the best you can be for your child. And without a doubt, your child will need your support, and because they won't understand what's happening. And with anyone who's had any type of trauma when it comes to sick kids, you ask any parent, it's traumatic, and it's difficult, and so my advice would be to embrace it and do the absolute best that you can. Because it's not easy, but my advice would be to embrace it.
Riska, over to you. Your husband spoke about not beating yourself up about it. Do you ever question or wonder, or have the doctors reassured you that it wasn't any one thing that you did or didn't do during your pregnancy, and that is why the child has been born with CDH? Have you people understood why this has happened? Is it genetic? Does anybody understand why Muhammad Yaqeen and other children like him have been born with this condition, CDH?
I think it's normal at the beginning to ask yourself, is there something that I did wrong as a mother, or is it just, what can it be? Because it's so overwhelming and scary to think, your child is kicking here inside in your stomach, and you're feeling all these things with your baby, but how's he going to come out of this? And you make so much dua and ask Allah to help you through this and to face whatever challenges lie ahead. And I think that the questioning part is going to be normal if there is going to be parents out there that's going to go through things like this. And the genetic part is they've done tests apparently, and it hasn't been proven yet that there's something between the husband and the wife that can cause it. It's not yet been proven, but I've read up about it. So I don't think the mother can actually just blame herself. It's something for both parents to go through and face together.
Probably some chromosomal thing. In terms of Mohammed Yakin now, as a 3-year-old, do you have to be very vigilant with his diet and lifestyle in general, or does he eat normally? And what about medication? Is he on an ongoing heavy medication routine?
When he was when he came out of hospital, the only medication he was on was reflux medication, which was just about a month, I think, that he was on it. And the only other medication that he's on now is the Budaflem pump and the S01 pump. Besides that, he's fine and he eats normal and he loves pizza.
So he eats pretty normally, and he really, you know, he's a bouncing 3-year-old like any other 3-year-old.
No, absolutely. He's a real bundle of joy, and you know, he keeps the house on a buzz all the time.
Okay, I presume you've got to go for regular checkups to a pulmonologist. Do you go to a pulmonologist with his condition?
No, that's why I'm still amazed because of his condition and how he came out of this. He doesn't need to do any more hospital visits or anything like that because they were so happy with him, and I think the x-ray showed them how much his lung has grown, so we don't need to do any more doctor visits.
We make lots of dua that the status quo remains, that you don't have to do loads of hospital visits, and that he grows from strength to strength, and all the other little ones in your support group, Allah give them all total shifa. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. Let's Assalamu alaikum to you.
Assalamu alaikum, shukran.
It was husband and wife, the Spears couple, talking to us about their little son, Mohammed Yakin, who is now 3 years old, and he suffers from something called CDH. And we make lots of dua that, you know, he does recover, and so does the other little children around the country and possibly around the world afflicted with this condition. We don't yet know enough about the condition, so we can't share more information with you, but all we can do is make dua. We have our third guest lined up to come into the studio, but we also want to remind you that we are taking calls. The lines are open. Any questions or comments you have, or perhaps suggestions on future shows that you'd like to see on ITV, not only on Let's Talk, but other platforms as well. We'd love to hear from you, and we have a hamper giveaway with the compliments of Broadway Sweets. So if you call in, you might just be the lucky person to receive this giveaway. Let's take an ad break, and we'll be back with you in a few minutes' time. Welcome back. It's great to be with you this Wednesday morning on Let's Talk. We're into the final segment of our show this morning, and we're going to be talking about the finance ministers, but the finance ministers in the home. We know that the rand is shrinking as we speak, and that means we're having to tighten our belts. And I can just give you a bit of advice. Don't even look at the Financial Times this morning, because you'll become very, very depressed. Things are getting harder and harder, and you kind of wonder when and how do people manage to put food on the table. And that's how bleak it's becoming. That means we as housewives, we as the finance ministers, have to be really innovative on how we keep the home fires burning. And to help us manage the home fires is Senior Credit Controller, Credit Officer at Al Barakah Bank, and that of course is Fatima Issouf. It gives me great pleasure to welcome her to the show this morning. Assalamu alaikum and welcome.
Walaikum salam. Jazakallah for having me on.
My pleasure entirely. Now, you're a senior credit officer. Obviously, that means you just know all the tricks and of how to manage your budget. I'm sure things are just really well in place in your home and in the homes of all your loved ones.
Oh, we do try. I think it's something that's important for us to manage as wives, especially in the home. It's important that we manage it.
Okay. For the purposes of this program this morning, we know that the financial minister announced the budget a week or so ago. Can we talk about the positives and negatives of the budget?
Okay. In my opinion, the finance minister announced a very well-balanced budget speech for something with something for everyone to take away. We all look forward to the welcome tax relief, increase in support grants, child support grants. Everybody looks forward to these type of things. But it must be said that the finance minister had to produce one of the toughest budgets yet for South Africa. This comes at a time where our country is experiencing economic decline, with forecasts for our economic growth looking very bleak. I think, if I'm not mistaken, forecasters have been forecast at 0.7% for 2016 and 1.2% for 2017. Together with this, we have education and fee challenges at the universities, service delivery protest, poor rainfall have all had a negative snowball effect on all fronts. Plus, we have the watchful eye of the rating agencies. It all contributes to the poor outlook. Aside from this, the volatility of our currency against major currencies, the weak SA rand, all of this shows low-level interest and confidence from investors in South Africa.
And as we speak, I understand that our finance minister is overseas negotiating that the rand should not be listed as junk status. So we hope and pray, everyone in South Africa should say a very fervent prayer that he is successful in his attempts there. But now, how can we as women, the ministers of home finance, make a difference in our homes as far as the budget is concerned?
Okay, a few points on that. Firstly, I think most of our husbands are going to refer to us as ministers of spending rather than ministers of home finance. But we most certainly are ministers of home finance. I think it's important for us to learn about our economic conditions, about inflation, how the budget speech is going to affect us. So a few points is, firstly, I would think maybe we should be purchasing cash instead of credit cards, because credit cards could earn very, very high interest rates. Secondly, maybe look at debit cards with, competitive fees and benefits like free point of sale purchases and that. I know Islamic banks like Al Baraka Bank do offer very competitive transactional banking accounts. School fees. We should try and possibly pay school fees up front, because a lot of schools offer discounts for kids that there's more than one child in school, and if you pay your fees up front.
At the beginning of the year.
At the beginning of the year.
Okay, let's just hold that thought. We have a call online. Assalamu alaikum to you and welcome.
Walaikum salam.
Welcome
I'm calling in about Let's Talk.
Yes.
So is there any question or is anything that I must say or...
You are on air, sister. What is your name, please, and what's on your mind this morning?
Oh, okay. Just hold on. Yes, Muhammad Yakin. Hello. That is Muhammad Yakin Irani. We just want to say hello to Muhammad Yakin.
Okay, we can't hear Muhammad Yakin. Mom, can you talk to us, please, or can you call us back? And when you do call back, please turn down your TV. Okay, we'll wait for that caller to get back. We interrupted you, Fatima.
Not a problem. I think some of the other things that women could do to assist and make a difference is possibly make a monthly budget and stick to it. Avoid impulsive purchases. Rather satisfy our needs instead of our wants, and we need to distinguish exactly what our needs are in comparison to our wants. When you shop, go with a list. Don't buy things just because they are on sale unless it's essential items that are really required. Make savings a family activity, include children in discussions of how to economize. You actually be surprised at the type of input children can actually have in this. And I think lastly, maybe we could try and avoid branded clothing, because we do get non-branded clothing that's quality, you know. So
though children and people would argue that the branded clothing is of a better quality,
I know.
and it would outlive, you know, the cheap alternative. So that's an argument you need to get around,
we
obviously.
I guess it would depend, but the main idea is not to be extreme.
Yes.
It's basically be wise and plan effectively in order to spend efficiently.
Okay.
That's it.
Let's take our next caller. Assalamu alaikum to you and welcome. Okay, unfortunately, the callers just hung up on us. So back to you. You're talking about, you know, pay cash. Don't, you know, don't use credit cards, etc. But the problem is, you know, you can't be walking around with cash all the time. I'm not comfortable doing that. I just feel so much safer with my debit or my credit card.
That's why I say a debit card is excellent, especially one with competitive fees and benefits. So if you have debit cards that don't cost you anything when swiping and point of sale purchases, it alleviates the need for carrying around cash. You know?
And I guess when you use a credit card, if you pay within the stipulated time, you don't pay any interest on that. So if you're wise in the way you use your card.
The problem is most of us are not really wise, and we tend to go a bit wild when we know, you know.
Okay. We have a caller. Assalamu alaikum to you and welcome. Hello, are you there, caller? Oh, our callers are getting cold feet this morning. All right. Back to you now. The big issue here is bond repayments. Most of us have bonds, and how has this budget impacted on our bonds?
Okay, I would think the most negative impact it would have had was due to the hike in the interest rate now to 10.25%, which means that those who have bond repayments, your repayment has now increased, thereby leaving you with less money in your pocket at the end of the day. So, for example, say if you had a bond of maybe 500,000 previously, you might have been paying approximately 6,500 on a bond repayment. Now, with the increase, you would have gone up to approximately 6,700. So, the main impact it would have had is now that, you know, you need to now accommodate for the extra money that you need to now be paying on your bond repayments. So homeowners or people looking to purchase a new property would have to recalculate and redo budgets to accommodate for the hike in the interest rate.
Okay, we are talking to Fatima Isup. She's the Senior Credit Officer at Al Baraka Bank, and she's talking to us about home finance. But I also understand we've got a caller online. Assalamu alaikum to you and welcome, caller. I can't hear you. Do you mind speaking up, please?
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. What's on your mind, sister, and can you identify yourself, please?
I just wanted to speak of air, sister, if you don't mind.
You're on air. It's not possible. You're on air right now, so let's have your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, because, okay, there is something I wanted to remind you. I won a book last time, the first time you opened the word.
It's on its way. Rest assured, it's definitely on its way to you. Thank you for your call. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so Fatima, back to you. We speak about bond repayments going up. It's going to make a dent in your pocket. Is it a good idea to fix your bond? And when rates go up or down, obviously if the rates go down, you lose out. But you know, in a situation like this, when the rates go up, it's not going to hurt your pocket.
Well, no, but obviously it would depend. If you have fixed rates, generally the rates are at a higher, it's not going to be specific at your prime interest rate. It could be at a higher rate. So it's obviously going to then depend on your affordability and whether it's really feasible. You could always also look at if, you know, in terms of savings and bond repayments, to possibly save towards lump sum payments or increase your bond installment to try and decrease the term of finance that you have, thereby, you know, allowing you to free up your property at a sooner rate.
I often hear people talking about the best savings is to, you know, put it, you know, if you've got excess cash, put it into your bond repayment. Is that the best way to save? explain?
Well, I guess it will depend on the different banks and how their bond repayments work. If I'm talking from our perspective from Islamic banking and Al Baraka Bank, you do have an option to put in lump sum payments, and it does benefit you in the long term. So if you do have money, excess money, it's a very good idea to put away on a monthly basis, and when it comes time and you're allowed to put in a lump sum payment, put in a lump sum payment, so it allows you, to bring down your bond amount and your repayments, so you're coming closer to paying off your home loan. So it is a good idea.
Mm-hmm. We all try and, maneuver our way around our rebates, submitting our tax, year end when we need to submit our tax forms, etc. And we're all wanting to get something back instead of paying in. How does one, go about working around with your tax form as well in being tax-wise, so that you don't have to pay to the, to pay SARS at the end of the year?
Okay, this is totally outside my expertise, so I think at this juncture I'm unable to answer that.
Okay, not a problem at all. Let's look at other ways of cutting expenses in and around the home.
Other ways in and around the home cutting expenses. I think in terms of, firstly, maybe purchasing in bulk, always working off your grocery list, looking for sales. But we need to be careful, because we need to ascertain how much you're really going to save. Are you going to incur extra petrol costs to go to the place? We tend to have that type of attitude. Cutting down on takeaway foods, restaurants, those type of things. Aside from it being a healthier option, you'll be saving a lot of money and you're becoming healthier. Encourage our children to take lunch from home instead of keeping them spending, because with all the diseases, obesity, all of this going around, we need to encourage our children to live a healthier lifestyle. Electricity and water usage. We need to be mindful and not wasteful. We could reduce our electricity and water bills. We need to entertainment. Doesn't necessarily have to be big screen movies. It can really cost an arm and a leg for a family to go out. So let's look at alternatives, going to the park, picnicking, spending quality time with our families in this fast-paced age.
I'm talking to Fatima Issouf. She's from Al Baraka Bank. We're talking about how we can make that rand stretch as far as we possibly can. And if you have any comments or questions, or whatever's on your mind, we're happy to hear from you. And we still have a giveaway this morning, a hamper of sweets from Broadway Sweets. So do call us, but call us after the ad break. We're going to stop now for the ad break, so you can call us after that. Welcome back. We're into the final segment of the show this morning. We're talking to Fatima Issouf. She's from Al Baraka Bank. We're talking about how you can make the rand go much, much further in these very hard economic times. Okay, we do have a call online, but let me just please put this caution out there. If you are calling in, we really welcome your calls, but do turn down your TV when you call, because otherwise it creates feedback and we're unable to hear you. So whatever you have on your mind, whatever you'd like to share with us, we're happy to hear from you. So to our caller, Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Can you hear me, caller?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? I'd like to know, how do we budget for the month of Ramadan? I was actually shocked when a member of my family, a lady, recently, I'm calling from Durban, the meat price was like 100 rand a kg, and suddenly it fell so quickly. And from now, I feel pressure that I have to start preparing for Ramadan. And recently we had, there was a storm and we didn't have lights. So what is my recourse? Am I, is wrong that I'm going to start preparing from now for the month of Ramadan? We budget for the month, every month. And now in Ramadan, we overspend, we buy more oil than we need. And as just now the lady was saying about obesity and everything, and if I say something, I feel that I shouldn't be. They feel like, oh no, you're not doing anything for Ramadan, and how could you say that we should have a normal meal and not prepare all the pies and samosas and everything? And, you know, you have to keep up with the Joneses, even though you are just a normal person who does make, and we don't have time to read or anything like that, because from the morning till the evening, in a month where we should not be gluttonous, we are thinking only what food. And imagine from now, Jamad al-Akhir is going to be just now, and we are thinking about Ramadan. I was like, oh my God, I feel such pressure. And yet, we're talking about, as the lady from Al-Barka is talking about credit, how do I budget? How do I budget now? And imagine the pressure that I am going to go
well,
through.
Sister, I promise you, we all feel that way. We all feel so pressurized.
Isn't it totally against what Ramadan is all about? Because, you know, when it comes to Eid Day, it seems like it's the most boring day of the year, because we eat so much. Can't we do it with a whole year? Every day we are eating all the stuff. We can go buy it. And this is Ramadan, we have to have it.
Okay, sister, let's leave it there. You've got me in stitches.
And isn't it why, she's talking about obesity, isn't that why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kind of punishes us, that we are not in solidarity with the ones who don't have?
Okay. I think, shukran very much. I think that was an excellent call. You really have me in stitches here. And really, I think lots of women identify with you. And for that, I think you are going to be the call of the day, and we're definitely going to send you this sweet hamper with the compliments of Broadway Sweets. You definitely deserve it. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. We're talking to Fatima Yusuf from Al Baraka Bank. We're talking budgets, and that sister really hit the nail on the head. Fatima, she spoke about Ramadan and the pressure, and it's true what she says, isn't it?
It most certainly is true. Ironically, like she mentioned, you know, a month where we should be fasting ends up a month where we should be feasting. I think personally we should be re-looking at the way we spending our Ramadans and what is the object of Ramadan. The whole object is to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not, you know, place our focus so much on the eating. So maybe she mentioned also about, like I mentioned, obesity and so on. We should really look, it's cleansing body, mind, soul. So eating all the pies and samosas is not really cleansing our bodies, you know. Maybe look at healthier options. Have a proper meal at iftar. Have things that are nutritious and nourishing for the body. So it's not that expensive, because pies, samosas, all these things are exceptionally expensive. So maybe, like I say, we shouldn't keep up with the Joneses. We should live within our means.
Absolutely. Now, there is a perception in South Africa that we as South Africans don't save. There isn't a culture of saving amongst us. What's your take on that?
It's actually an excellent question and very, very true. South Africa actually has one of the lowest savings in the world and a very poor culture of savings. We need to understand that savings is not for a single person in the household, but a collective effort amongst everybody in the household. The government and Banking Association have embarked on an initiative called the Teach Your Children to Save initiative. It was launched in 2010. The aim of this, I think it's now called the Start Saver. The aim of this basically is to inculcate a culture of savings amongst children at a very young age. So what happens is most banks, including Al Baraka Bank, go to schools during the course of the year in July and teach children how to save, basically give them lessons on savings and its benefits. And the Banking Association has accommodated for Islamic banks to give Islamic lessons on savings, as we don't deal in interest compared to conventional banks.
That's wonderful. And how is the Muslim community responding to that?
Alhamdulillah, we've been doing it for a few years now, and it's having a good impact. So
wonderful. Excellent. Now, I know back in the day, you know, even the schools, and perhaps what Al Baraka and the education department's doing in going to schools and teaching children the culture of saving was evident in you know, days gone by as well, because they used to have stamps, weekly saving stamps, and you know, things like that. All very innovative ideas in getting people hooked into the culture of saving. And I'm pleased to hear that that's happening with Al Baraka and other banking institutions as well. But we'll talk more on that in a minute or two. We have a caller online. Assalamu alaikum to you. Welcome to the show, and who am I speaking to?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Nice to hear from a brother. Who am I speaking to? Welcome to the show.
How are you, sisters? Okay. My question is to the lady from Al Baraka regarding the bonds that they have. And I'm given to understand that it's definitely different from the conventional banks, right? Is it correct that the is taken up front, right? And there's a term period. I'm given to understand the maximum is 7 years, right? And she mentioned that one can accumulate amounts and make a payment towards that. Now, when we make the payment towards that, what happens to the profit that has been charged earlier? Right? That's my question.
Thank you very much indeed for your call.
Just one more thing regarding the previous caller. As I said, she had you all rolling. The aspect of our Ramadan, the key factor there is abstinence, not extravagance. And unfortunately, we as South Africans, as the lady mentioned, we are too extravagant. Absolutely. Why should we be extravagant in Ramadan? We should be extravagant looking after the poor and the needy. And as she said, it's for the spiritual upliftment. And yet the ladies or the people who spend hours preparing months before filling the fridges, that is totally contrary towards what Islam is asking from us. Thank you.
Brother, thank you indeed. Point taken, excellent points raised, and we do appreciate your call. Shukran and salamu alaikum to you. Fatima, would you like to respond?
Okay, in terms of what the brother mentioned regarding a 7-year bond, there's different types that are done at the bank, and the one that he's referring to in particular is called Murabaha, which is cost plus profit transaction. You're not allowed in this transaction to put in any lump sum payments. So once you enter into the contract, you've agreed upfront on the profit that you're going to pay. So there's no lump sum payments allowed on the Murabaha concept. Mm-hmm. You could always come into the branch, speak to one of our sales consultants. They'll be better able to discuss in detail the different types of home loan finance that we do have at the branches.
Okay, that's almost all we have time for. So your closing remarks for the show this morning, inshallah.
Okay, inshallah, in conclusion, I'd just like to say that the whole object of savings is to be disciplined and make a start, and to reduce our expenses in order to increase our savings and reduce debt, thus helping us manage our finances much better and allowing for funds to be available if there are any emergencies or any such things that crop up. And we make dua that Allah grant us lots of barakah in our livelihoods, inshallah.
Ameen, ameen. And shukran for coming in.
Jazakallah for having me on the show.
Well, that then brings us to the end of the show. We'd like to thank you for participating. We had lots of fun with the callers this morning. Please do keep calling in, and also let us have your thoughts on Let's Talk and future shows that you'd like us to do, not only here on Let's Talk, but the other shows here on ITV. We're going to wrap up with our thought of the day, and it's wassalam from me and, of course, my great production team here at Let's Talk. Now remember, experience is a blessing in disguise. It teaches one to keep on, no matter how hard the going may be. A lesson one has to learn before one can succeed in anything in life. Wassalam.
Ya hala, 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 ya hala. يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا